Hey, so thanks everyone for being here. Business Brew back live in person after almost 2 years. So quick history. The last one we got to do live was March 2020. Actually, if you head to the Tinderbox Facebook page, you'll see a little video that I put together. Nathan Slaybaugh with Slaybaugh Media is actually the one who's helping us stream today. Nathan took video at that one because we thought we needed some video, and he was doing it for another client. Actually, Leanne was our guest, and he was there with her, but he offered me the video. So I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have video. I'm gonna be able to promote Business Brew like properly, and then like the next month we had to shut down. So I think it was May 2020. So I took April to kind of regroup, and I think we all kind of did. And then by May, I decided let's just do this online. So from May 2020 through all of 2021, every Business Brew has been virtual. So we did it through Zoom and then live streamed that through Facebook. So we're still live streaming on Facebook today, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna do my best to monitor the questions there. And then I want to take care of a little bit of housekeeping before we get too far in. So the first thing is I want to thank Bernardo Wills Architects. They're providing us this space, which is really cool. So if you're looking for a corporate event space, they have the Bissinger Room, which is available for corporate events. That's as much plugging as I will do on that, but Bernardo Wills are great folks, and this is a really great space. Nathan Slaybaugh is providing the media for us. And then we also have Sarah Brown here, and we'll let Sarah introduce herself in a minute. So normally in Business Brew, what we would do, especially when we had a bigger group, is we would go around and take time to introduce ourselves, and I still want to do that, but I do want to give a heads up to the online group that you're not going to hear everybody. So what I'm going to do is as you introduce yourselves here, I'm going to try to type it and let people know who's here live in the room. And then what I've been doing over the course of the last 2 years is I was live streaming on Zoom and live streaming on Facebook. I was trying to do like cross introductions. So if you were on Zoom, you got to introduce yourself, but if you're on Facebook, you had to type it, and then I would try to do it. So still trying to create community without, being in person. So we'll just go this way so that we can end on Sarah. So we'll let everyone introduce themselves, and then we'll let you give your rundown, and then we'll get crazy. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Okay, go ahead, buddy.
I'm Don Snyder. Historically, I have done recruiting for financial services. I'm currently on hiatus, evaluating what my next step is going to be.
It's a good place to be. Thanks for being here.
My name is Mark Terrell, and I'm a spiritual director, and I help run a spiritual direction and life coaching practice. And I've only been to a couple of his Zoom things, but that's because I was too lazy to get up in the morning.
See, that's the thing. I feel like if you're too lazy to get up and just even be in jammies, that's on you. Like, that's not on me. Like, I feel like...
I'm not blaming you, I'm blaming you.
No, it's all good. The thing is, and that's what's been really cool about streaming and what I really wanted to bring together over the last year or 2 years was, one, the ability for anybody to join, whether they're at work or at home or in their pajamas or whatever, but also we've had people from across the country join, not only as guests, like people who are watching, but also as presenters, people who came. So we've had a couple folks from Philly and places like that where we were able to get a real diversity of voices, and I thought that was really cool. All right, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
So it's Sam with Brew. You've been running for 4 years, and I attended one of your Facebook thing, or we attended, I think it was through Zoom it was.
Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty neat, and then you sent an email out saying this was happening. I was like, I gotta sign up. Let's get some marketing in.
Love it. All right, last but not least, as far as, attendees are concerned.
Francisco Gutierrez. I'm a financial advisor slash financial coach. So working with individuals at different stages of their life. So it could be people just retiring or people just don't know what to do with their finances. So coaching them along the way, working on the little things so they can achieve the big things. I was actually at that last Business Brew that was in person, so with Leanne.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually my last Business Brew. But I've talked to you since.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of got burnt out on the Zoom stuff, but I'm glad you're back in person. I'm excited.
I think, it's not uncommon to hear that, you're burnt out on Zoom. We've all heard that. But the other thing it's tricky to try to build community remotely. What I love about it is it's created a lot of flexibility for me in my work. I don't know where you land with that, but just being able to not always have to drive to see a client, especially when you have like a North Idaho client or something like that, it's been really great. that said, being in person, you can't beat it. So hopefully we get to do this a little bit more often. We're just so you know, programming note, we're aiming at every other month for right now. So we'll definitely be here again in April and June. We'll probably retool for the summer, which is what we do. Typically, like pre-COVID, we would get together for Business Brew happy hour and do drinks. So we've done that at Black Label, and we'll probably do that again, maybe June or July, maybe August. We'll see. But yeah, okay. Without further ado, Sarah, go ahead. Tell us who you are, what you're doing, why I asked you to be here. I have my version of why I asked you to be here, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. I'm Sarah Brown. I do want to say thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much to Josh for having me. I'm a small business coach. The name of my company is Work Life. I work with newer small business owners and really help them get started and create a strong foundation for their business so that they can grow and build a business and life they love long term and beat that small business failure rate.
That's awesome.
Thank
you. I met Sarah by not actually meeting her. So Sam, I don't know if you remember, but you were at a workshop. Was it Your Business Will Survive This? Was that the workshop? Was it like 80s themed, the template? Does that ring a bell? Does it? So anyway, I was putting together this workshop, and it was like a half day, almost all day workshop series. And I really wanted to help people whose businesses were struggling during the pandemic. It was 100% free. So the thing is doing a workshop like that, it's just me talking the whole time. There was some questions and some interaction, but I really tried to break it up with some videos. And I was really struggling to find somebody to talk about social media. I'm pretty picky when it comes to my standards for who gets to come talk to my people about social media. And that's not because I'm necessarily an expert. It's just I've kind of seen what works and what doesn't work, and I have my own thoughts. Well, so one of my clients on their Instagram is following Sarah, and I was goofing around in their account, and Sarah had this really great video that she had posted, and I literally stole it from her Instagram without asking her, and then put it in my workshop and then played it. So when I was like, I want to get back to doing this, and I did some surveys, and people really wanted somebody to come talk about social media, I said, I know who to do. So when I reached out to you, I said, I had to tell her I stole your video and played it, and I'm really sorry. But you did this really great video. It was the 3 keys to, I think you did Instagram growth, but I'm making you get a little out of your comfort zone and do all social media. You're gonna be fine. But I really wanna talk about that. So you can either decide if you wanna go one by one or just give us all 3 and then we can dig in. But that was why I stole that video. Those 3 keys were really, really good, and they're just sort of like those foundational best practices for all social media sites. So what are they?
Okay, so the 3 keys to social media growth are post consistently, add value, and engage with your audience. And it'd probably be best to go through them.
Yeah, let's go through them. Before you jump into that though, my wife did jump onto Facebook and say she's here. So we do have at least, and I can see how many people are actually streaming. There's more people streaming. So if you're joining us online, feel free to jump in and tell us that you're here. But my wife Natalie is joining. She just wanted everybody to know.
Awesome.
So,
hello,
hi,
Natalie.
There you go. All right, so go through them. Go through. Let's start with post consistently, and just tell me what you mean by that, and like what is our takeaway from that?
Yeah. Well, first I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of where this came from.
Sure, yeah, do that.
So the idea where these 3 keys came from is if you tune into social media gurus, you study social media, these are the things that are coming through, which is post consistently, add value, engage with your audience. But there's a lot of other noise coming through too, like you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And so it's really been through my experience with my first business. I did have some social media clients, so their businesses, and then my business now. These are the things that I have seen consistently across the board, regardless of the trends in social media. These are the 3 things that are truly going to matter. And this has been for at least 5 years now. So posting consistently is posting consistently on whatever regular basis works for you. You don't need to be posting every single day.
What? I don't have to post every day?
No. You don't even, so it's really whatever works for you on social media, whatever works for the business owner. So I would say the absolute minimum you should ever be posting would be like once a week. If you absolutely have no time for social media, but it's really important to show up consistently, because that's going to tell the logarithms of whatever website you're using that you're there, you're active, and it's going to keep people continuously coming back and interacting with your social media. But another very important part of this, especially with everything we've been experiencing over the last couple of years, is if someone goes to your account and they see that you haven't posted in a few weeks, in a month, they might think you're out of business. So it's really important to show up consistently and find whatever basis works for you. Just keep showing up.
I'm so glad you said that, because I say this all the time, and there's two traps people fall into this, right? One is I get busy, and so I just don't post, and I'm a victim of that, and I'll tell a story about that later. But like, you get busy, or things happen, so you don't post. The other trap, and this is more on like Instagram, is they get addicted to posting stories. So they never post an actual post. So when you head to their feed and you see the grid, the last post was from like 52 weeks ago. My first assumption is absolutely that you're closed. If I'm not following you, I don't see your stories, and stories disappear, right? So talk about that. Like, what is that? Like, is there a good mix that you've seen? What's the people's affinity? Where does that come from? They just want to do stories. Like, what have you seen in that area? Because I think that's a really good point, that you've got to make sure your content doesn't get stale, because people will assume that.
I think when it comes to balancing stories, balancing your main feed posts, I think people tend to go for stories because it's really easy. You don't have to write a caption. It's on the fly. It's super casual. They can be almost more of themselves as opposed to like showing up as their business. But yes, it's very important to have those main feed posts. And I think a good balance is, depending on what works for you, we'll say 2 to 4 or 5 main feed posts per week. And then I think 1 to 5 stories every day that you're working or your business is open, if you have a physical location. So there is a balance there. And one great thing that you can do if you're finding that you're like, I don't have time to post, I don't want to post, I don't know what to post about, is sit down once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks, and plan out like, what is going on in my business? What is it going to be beneficial for my customer to hear right now that's going to lead them to doing business with me? And then you can write all your captions ahead of time. So this is called like batch content creation. You can sit down and do everything at once, so it's just good to go. You can use an automated scheduler. Facebook offers one. I believe it's called Meta Business Suite now. And you can schedule your post.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at Facebook. Sorry.
Yes. And you can schedule your post out to Facebook or Instagram through there, so they just automatically post. Mm-hmm. So if you're like, I know I have a busy month coming up, boom, 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 get those posts scheduled out, and they're just going to post without you having to think about it at all.
So you're bringing up so much. I'm trying to make notes so I can go back, but you just gave us we could be done, and I think everybody here would be better for what you just said. But a couple of things. So as I was getting ready for Business Brew, I've been turning the old ones into podcasts, right? So I looked back, and the next one that I needed to post was actually recorded January 7th, 2021. So if you remember what happened the day before, it was, as my 3-year-old would say, it's not good, right? So the day before, not good, and I don't care what your perspective on that, I think everybody can agree that wasn't a fun day. So what happened was, though, is that afternoon at about 1 o'clock, I lost all productivity. So did a lot of other people, because we all started watching the news. Well, I was following along on Twitter trying to see what was going on, right? Well, all this regularly scheduled content kept coming through my feed, like from businesses, and it was really weird, because it seemed like it was almost tone deaf, right? Clearly something's happening in DC that everybody else is paying attention to, yet your automated sales content is still going out into the world. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, if I schedule content, what are some of the rules around that? Like, do I need to just schedule it and then walk away and never look at it again? Like, what are your tips for that?
I would say schedule it, but know that it is going to be flexible, and be aware of what's going on in your life, your business, and the world, because things can change. And I wouldn't schedule out further than like a month at a time, because things do change so much, and things may even change in your business. Maybe you have to close for the day or things like that. So you want to schedule it out, but then if anything comes up, you do want to be very sensitive and aware of that for sure.
I'm making notes. I can't ask my next question until I make. Okay, so you said I don't know what to post. I love the idea of creating batch content. I work with my clients on that too, trying to think ahead. I even have them sit down and this is one of my tips, is to do a year at a glance, where you just look like, what are the things that happen in your business every year regardless? So I know you got your start with your first business, you did a lot of farmers markets, right? So doing farmers markets, when those are gonna happen, roughly when they're gonna start. So for a business that's doing something like that, that's a really good thing to map out. So talk a little bit about creating batch content, especially if I'm not sure what to post about, because you've said some things and I really want you to key in on those. So
Okay.
talk to me about how do I do that?
Well, there's so much that can be said about what you should be posting about. But I would say kind of some best practices that are going to work for everyone is look at what is going on in your business in the next month or the next couple months. Do you have special promotions or sales coming up? Is there something specifically you're working on selling? Are there any holidays that relate to your business? So pay attention to those. And then if you're feeling like you don't know what to write, you don't know what to post, there's a lot I can go into about that, and it's going to be very particular for everyone's business. But I think, like I said, one of the best things you can ask yourself is, what would my customer need to hear or know right now that's going to hold their hand and walk them through my door, through my Etsy shop, wherever it is you're trying to get them to go purchase. Think about what they need to hear. And also remember that they don't know your business as well as you do. So I'll see a lot of people, like with physical locations, they don't ever post their address or their hours.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I know. It's
So be aware of those things.
Okay, so we have to stop because this kills me. And I know, because you already said it, I know we're going to be in agreement on this, but I'll tell you how many times lately I've tried to find information about a business and then I can't. And not everybody goes to Google. And you would think they all do, that we all start our search on Google or that we all immediately go to our browser. But so many people have this. Mark was talking about this, I think, a little bit. Oh no, it was Nathan. Nathan was talking about this. Like, no one would have predicted in the early days of the internet that within 25 years we would have these crazy supercomputers in our pockets. But if you look at your web traffic, a lot of people are surprised by how many people visiting their sites are on mobile-only devices. So what I've learned is that people will just pick the easiest thing, right? They'll just go, okay, I'm on Instagram all day, so I'll go find that business on Instagram. And if you don't have your address there, so what are your tips for that? How should I approach all my social media profiles as a business? What are some things that I should be looking at and doing?
Okay, so I love to say that social media, especially Instagram, is essentially the new yellow pages. So you would want to have anything listed in there that you might have listed in the yellow pages. You want to make sure if someone goes to your profile, they can easily tell what you do, how to do business with you, when they can do business with you, and where you are. So having things like, this is what we do. We do this, we install carpet, actually saying what you do so that it's clear to them at first glance if you're for them or someone they may need, as well as, including your address, including your website, including your hours. And another good point you made about us not really going to Google is right now with everything that's going on, even if we go to Google, those hours may be different from what the store is actually using, which I've run into a lot. And so that's why and I know those hours I think are a little harder to update and a little less fluid, but Instagram social media is fluid. So keep those updated hours there.
And if you're going to update your hours, especially on Instagram, knowing that when I log in today, I might not see your most recent post. I might see a post that the algorithm thinks I want to see, right? So I should probably include a date, right? Like if I'm saying hours today are changing, if I do maybe a graphic or something, I should probably include what today is, because a lot of people aren't even looking at when that posted, right? They just go, oh, they're closed today. Yeah. Right? So, have you seen people run into that where they're trying to use Instagram as or any social media profile as a timely thing, and then it kind of backfires?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's important if you are posting something like that, closed today or winter hours, to include what the dates are, because you never know when someone's going to see it. And I also think on Instagram, it doesn't say the actual date it was posted. It'll say like 8 weeks ago or something like that. So yes, include those dates. You want things to be clear and easy for people.
And I have, so my oldest is 19 and he doesn't ever read the caption. He just, his thumb is getting a workout. He just scrolls. So if he sees that your hours are, changed and it doesn't tell him what specific day, he's not going to click see more or whatever. Like he's just not. And I think there's a lot of people that use social media that way.
Yeah.
It's like, I just need to at a glance to know what's going on and then I can be good with my day, right? Okay, that was really good. Again, we could just stop right now, and I think that would be, we're not going to, but we could if we needed to. All right, so one other thing you said, I really want to spend a little bit of time here. You talked about what does my customer need to know or hear, and that was in a relationship to a little bit of like, I don't know what to post about. How do I put myself in the mindset of my customer? And we'll give an example from the room. So Francisco does financial advising and some coaching in that. And so it might be something where he goes, okay, the market isn't doing well. Do I need to jump in and tell people what my interpretation of this is? Is that something that people would want to know? How does he know that? How does he do that digging? How does he find that out?
That's a good question. And it's going to be kind of different for everyone. It's a little bit hard for me to describe like how you see things from your customer's point of view, but just really trying to almost strip down what you know about your business and your industry in a way and think, if I had never heard of this business, if I've never heard of this industry, what do I need to know? Another thing you can think about is, so education they would need to know, personal stories they would need to know, but also, where was I going with this? Buying objections. Those are kinds of things you can post about too, is buying objections. But just really trying to, strip down what you know about your business, put yourself in your customer's shoes, and think about what do they actually need to know? What are the thoughts going through their head? Why wouldn't they buy from me right now? And speak to those things.
That I think, so I'm trying to find, there's somebody I'm following on LinkedIn. And she is a professional. She's like a job. So if you're looking for a job, she helps you find a job. But she only does it for people who are in like the salary range of like mid 6 figures. And everything she posts is a story. It's never just like, hey, here's how to tweak your resume. It's here's this real life example of this person who, and one of the examples, this just cracks me up. So she was working with a client who was looking for a job. And somebody actually reached out to her and wanted her to apply for this job as a marketing job. And so she interviewed, the salary range was way too low, so she politely told them no. And then they pushed and they said, we really want you to apply for this job. And she says no, and then they said, we really want you to apply for this job, and part of the application process, we'd really love you to tell us what we should be doing with our marketing. So not only were they trying to lowball her in the offer, but they were also trying to get her to do work for them for free by creating this marketing plan as a part of the hiring process, right? But the fact that this person who I'm following on LinkedIn shared this whole thing as a story is way more memorable than if she had just said, don't do free work for somebody when you apply. So Francisco, if I'm hearing you right, instead of just telling people what he thinks is going on with the market, he could say, I just got off the phone with this client. And he could even almost make it up. And I'm not advocating, fake news, Francisco, so don't do that. But he could almost, do a hypothetical and just go, I had a client call me. They're really concerned with what they see is going on. This is what I told them, and this is what their strategy is going to be, as a way to maybe create content that's a little bit more approachable.
Yes. Story is such a great thing in content. And because people are connecting, like you said, it's more memorable. Stories are more memorable. Our brains are actually made to remember stories over like facts. And it connects with our emotion. So that's a big thing about the storytelling piece too, is people can actually see themselves in that story, and it's going to connect with their emotion. And so they remember it better for sure. So there are times when you should just share like straight across facts, or these are our hours, or this is what's going on here. Here's some tips for this. Like definitely do that content still, but it is very valuable and important to continuously include those stories as well, because that's what people are going to remember. That's what's going to connect with them. They're going to be able to see themselves in that.
So if I have a story to tell, and I know each platform's a little bit different, but walk me through, so say I came to you as a client and I said, hey, I just had this really cool interaction with one of my clients that I want to share. What's the best way I should do that? So like, how would you coach somebody? Is it video? Is it a graphic? Is it just long form text? Like, what do you think is the right, and I know again, it's platform dependent. Maybe let's start with Instagram and then we can branch out.
I would say it is really platform dependent on the kind of content the kind of content, like video versus photo versus graphic, that you would want to be sharing. But if they were like, I have this story to tell, where do I start? I would probably say just kind of do like a rough draft, just get it out of your head. What is the story? And then from there, you can kind of edit and narrow it down, but look for that transformation and look for sort of that aha moment in the story, or that kind of emotional gut punch in the story. Make sure there is something there like that. And a great resource I want to share about this is the book Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Highly recommend. Yes, that's probably my favorite business book. So
What's it called again? Sorry, I want to make sure I get it right.
Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Okay.
And so he walks you through like how to run your business as a story, how to tell a story, all the like key pieces of a story arc. Highly recommend that resource.
You also, I want to double back to something, as we were picking on Francisco a little bit, and you said, strip down your business to the most basic version. I think it's so easy. So here we are in a building that's owned by some architects, and I know for them, it's very easy for them to get bogged down in the language that they use, using acronyms or things like that. So talk to me about the importance of that. Am I diluting my brand by doing that? Why would I consider stripping it down to its most basic element?
So it depends a little bit on what your business is, because if you're business to business with someone else in your industry, then things like acronyms and industry terms, they're going to understand. So you really just want to think about who you're speaking to, who your customer is, what level of understanding do they already have of what you do or your industry. And you really want to strip it down because you don't want to go over their head. You don't want to be too high level. You don't want to be talking about things that they're not at yet or they don't understand. So yeah, that's really the importance of it, so that it doesn't push them away and so that they can easily understand what you're doing. But if your business is like you're speaking to someone else in your industry and that is your customer and they would understand these high level terms or these acronyms, then speak their language.
Oh, I think that's really important. Speak their language. I say this a lot to customers or to clients, especially when they're trying to figure out like, what keywords do I need to use for stuff? And I always encourage them, what would your customer search online if they were searching for your business? So I think that's the other thing, is it's almost like you have to unlearn what you know about your business and really put yourself in the shoes of your customer, right? Like,
yes.
and do it in a way where you really start to understand. So I run in this a lot. People, who don't necessarily have a background in marketing, which is fine. That's what, you and I kind of exist for. They tend to say marketing, advertising are all the same thing. Right? So me knowing that going into it, I can start to have a conversation with them in the digital space, knowing that they might confuse the two. There is some similarities, but they are very different. There's not a question there. I tried to get one, but I just was jumping in with a statement.
So now I'm curious, because for me, I would think marketing is kind of marketing overall, but advertisement is like paid advertising.
That's exactly it. No,
okay.
That's exactly it. But what I'll find, so the most common answer I get, and this is a little off topic, but I think it makes sense, is people tend to think of marketing as that bigger umbrella. They think of advertising, I get this all the time, as event-specific promotion. It's really weird. And my kids know what an ad is, right? They watch YouTube, they go, oh, they're ads, I hate the ads. Well, that's short for advertising, but it's funny how, like as adults, we don't stop and think. We know it's a TV ad. Well, that's advertising. It is an arm of marketing. And we can do that. We can do that on Instagram. We can do it on Facebook. We can run ads anywhere. But when we're not running ads, it's just more considered marketing. So you had it right. I mean, you're spot on.
Okay.
So no, and it happened. I mean, it's so many people get it a little sideways. So yeah, I had another question. We're only like in post consistently, so which is good because I have like 50 million questions. We'll be fine. You talked about adding value, and I think we've touched on that a little bit. Like Francisco needs to strip his business down, and we need to really understand the language. Talk to me about how that creates engagement, or how we engage with our audience. What are some of the tips and tricks you have there?
Okay, I want to speak a little more on adding value.
Okay, do it.
I don't think we quite got to everything.
Okay.
So when we say adding value or, create valuable marketing, the idea behind that is that your post would be interesting to someone somewhere, essentially. You don't want to day after day just post, this is our address, these are our hours, come see us, or come buy my thing. You want to be adding value to people's lives too, so they have a reason to show up and keep coming back to you, and they have that connection with you. So adding value, like bottom line, you just want it to be interesting to someone somewhere. But you'll also hear people say like educate, entertain, inspire, or invite. And invite is kind of like the sales posts.
Okay, you got to give me those again. Educate, entertain, invite, and I know I missed one in the middle.
Educate, entertain, invite, and inspire.
Inspire.
Those are like the 4 sort of categories or ways to add value to people.
So I shouldn't just post all the sales that I have running all the time and just only hit people with, price and item?
No.
Why not?
Because it's going to turn people off, and they're going to go find someone else to do business with that they have a better connection with. And they're not going to want to continue to follow you, is a really big thing when it comes to social media. If you want to continually be part of their lives, you have to be giving something to them. Just like if you had a friend that only ever reached out when they were moving and needed you to come help them move.
That's not a friend.
You're like, nah. So yeah, you want to be adding value to their life.
You are, though. I mean, if you're only helping them move, I guess there's value there, but you want to be more than that.
You want to be not the person calling them to ask you, ask your help for moving.
Yes. So one tip that I have for my clients is to look at what you've done in the past and see what people engaged with. And I'm working with a newer client, and they have really been stuck in this kind of price and item rut where it's just like, here's our collection, here's our special, here's our thing. And if you look back, and I look back all the way to the middle of the summer on Facebook, you could see they were getting you could see when it would bump, the engagement or the impressions would bump. And when it did, it was always something more personal. It was always something, like behind the scenes. I always say people want to know how the sausage is being made, right? Like, so I know Instagram gets a little bit different, but a lot of these tools have the ability to do a look back and see what's going on. Is that something you recommend to people when we're looking at adding value? Just like find out what has been popular.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Look back at your post, see what got the most engagement, see what people were enjoying for sure. And you can, if it was long enough ago, you can just reuse that post, or you can rephrase it or rewrite the post as well.
Talk to me about that, because I'm an advocate of, so here's a great example. So we're recording this today, it's going out live. Everyone here is getting to experience it, but because we're recording it, I'll get to repackage it and then reshare it probably next week. And then in a few months, I'll repackage it as a podcast. So I don't just let one business brew just come into the world and then just leave. And that's actually what I was doing pre-pandemic, was just sitting down and doing it and then never talking about it other than to promote the next one. So, and I'll even blog about it. So repurposing content or reusing content is totally acceptable?
Absolutely, yes. And a little more about why it's totally acceptable, because such a small percentage of your audience on social media actually sees your posts. So if you are, let's say you're repurposing content on the same platform, chances are they either didn't see the post the first time you posted it, or it was so long ago that it's great for them to hear the information again. If it's something where you're repurposing, like using it through different formats, a blog, a podcast, so on and so forth, people learn and intake information in different ways. So like, maybe they listen to the podcast, they watch the YouTube video, they read a post, like they're all going to intake that differently, and that's all going to help drive the point home to them.
And I think that comes back to what you were saying earlier, is understanding your audience. And if Francisco knows that most of the people that he works with are all going to read because he has the data on the clicks on posts or whatever, then he starts going, okay, maybe I'll post a picture, but then I write like a big old story, and that's what goes out on Instagram, or that's what goes out on LinkedIn, probably more LinkedIn. But yeah, it's coming back to understanding how your audience wants to absorb content too. Especially if you're like the younger generation, right? Then it becomes more, I hesitate to say TikTok and things like that, but that is what that generation is consuming.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you good on adding value? Did we unpack
so.
that? Okay, because now I want to get into engagement, because let's say, I'm picking on Francisco, so he's gone out of his way to figure out what his audience wants. He's stripped his business down to its most basic components. He's using language that everyday people would use. He's just not getting any clicks. Like, what's next? What is he missing, or what does he need to be looking at, and how does he need to like approach it so he gets engagement?
Yes. So if you're posting consistently and you're adding value, but that's the only two pieces you're doing, you're probably still not going to see social media growth. So actually engaging with your audience is really important. Every social media platform is a little different on the level of engagement you can do, but I kind of like to say traditional advertising and marketing is like you're on a stage. You're just speaking at people. There's no people speaking back to you. But social media is a party. It's not a stage. It's a conversation. So like, bottom line, you need to be responding to any comments on your posts.
No.
You need to be responding to any messages. That is like bottom line engagement. But you also want to be going out and having conversations on your customers' profiles, on other industry leaders in your area as well. You want it to be a conversation, and it's almost like you have to give to receive. So if you want people to come comment on your posts, you need to go and comment on their posts. And there's kind of a balance to this. You could essentially engage forever. There's an endless amount of engagement you could do. So don't overwhelm yourself. But that's why I say bottom line, like, respond to those comments and messages, but also when you have time, try to seek out and create conversations as well.
I have so many questions now, because that was really good. So my first question is, so Francisco posts this story. He's got this really great story about a client who's freaking out over the market. And somebody jumps into his comments and says, you're a hack, you don't know what you're talking about, the market's blah, 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 Bitcoin's the future. What does he do with like a negative comment like that? How does he respond? What are some of your tips and best practices for when the negativity strikes?
That is a great question. I would say there's kind of two ways you can take this. If you feel like it's something you could actually speak to, just, respond. Always keep things professional, keep things, kind of neutral. You don't want to seem like you're upset or coming back at them, but respond if it seems like you have a response, and if it seems like the comment isn't just trying to get attention or cause issues. But if it just seems like someone trolling, as they say, and just trying to cause issues or be a jerk or post for nonsense, I would just delete the comment. You don't need to respond to them.
One of the things, so depending on the platform, that may or may not be an option for you, right? So like if Francisco's posting on his personal feed on LinkedIn, he may not have that option. So one thing that I always encourage people to do is always still respond to it, but you can try to take the conversation offline. So you could say, hey, thanks for your feedback. Here's my phone number, give me a call.
Yes.
Right? I want to talk to you more about Bitcoin or whatever, right?
Yes.
Like he could respond to that. But I really like what you said about the first one, there's always going to be bad actors. So also having maybe a rubric in your mind, okay, is this person acting in good faith or bad faith? Or are they just trying to stir the pot? If they're just trying to stir the pot, most people are going to probably realize that. So all we're trying to do is let people know it doesn't get under your skin. And I think what you said about keeping it neutral is really important, because we've all heard those stories where, and I think sometimes we cheer that, but where a business responded to a negative comment and we went, oh yeah, good for them. But then you really do have to think, what is the impact and how does that actually look for that business?
Yeah, absolutely. Keep things neutral. And I did love what you say about taking it out of the comments, essentially. Like, okay, let's have a call, let's have a message. And if they are just trying to cause problems, that's going to stop it right in the tracks, most likely.
And I have seen that, especially with school districts, with all the tension that's going on, mask, don't mask, that whole thing. When somebody jumps in with a super nasty and a school district or a school says, hey, we'd love to hear more about this, give us a call, it crickets, almost always, because they're just trying to stir the pot. Mm-hmm. You also said, in terms of, creating engagement, you talked about interacting with other accounts. I want to talk about that a little bit. So I think the tendency is, especially if you're a business, is to just throw that content out into the world. And maybe you respond to the comments, maybe you don't, but you also are not interacting as that business in the digital space. Platforms like Twitter and Instagram allow for two-way interaction between customers and businesses. What's a ratio? How often should I be doing that? Because I could spend all day on social media. If I took every one of these tips and said, this is going to be my world, I could be on Instagram all day, but I'm not going to get any work done. So what's a good balance there?
And engagement, it is, like I said, it's one of those things you literally could do endless hours. So it's really about finding a balance that works for you. The more engagement, the better, but that shouldn't necessarily be your main focus, or you shouldn't be stressing yourself out trying to engage. So I would say a good balance would be maybe like a minimum of about an hour a week, but I also like to say very minimum engaging on your own account. So that's responding to your comments, responding to your messages. If you don't have time, you can't fit anything else in engagement wise, at least respond to your comments and your messages.
Yeah, I think that's really good. It's so funny when you see businesses, especially when positive comments come in and they don't respond. It's like, give them a pat on the back. Like, hey, thanks for reaching out. We all know, I can't tell you the last time I left a positive review. And I don't even leave negative reviews. It takes a lot for me to go, okay, that frustrated me and you're getting 1 star, or that wowed me, you're getting 5 stars. I just don't. Mm-hmm. So if I do, I kind of want to be rewarded for that. I want the business to, say, hey, thanks. And I think, to be honest with you, do you know who does a good job of this? Is the airlines tend to do a pretty good job of this on Twitter. So I know like Alaska and Southwest are pretty good to respond, and they have a pretty good customer service arm, and then they'll initial who's the live representative that was answering that. So as much as we get frustrated with the airlines sometimes, they do some things right. So I think that's good. All right, you ready for more? Did you have any thoughts on that, on engaging? Okay, so I want to talk about what you have seen. So tell me about some of the favorite things that you've seen either your clients do or people, like other accounts that you've just watched and adored, because I know I have my favorite things that I've watched and adored, but what are some things that you've seen either clients do really well, some strategies? What are some things that you watch and go, oh my gosh, I would love to be able to copy that?
Oh, there's so many things. And I think right now, one thing that is working really well on social media is knowing that there is some level of personality or personal branding to your business if you're showing up on social media. So not just coming across like, this is our logo, we're a business, there's no actual people behind here, like having that really impersonal feel. So I see having personality is like probably the biggest thing I see
can we
working.
stop on that? Because I think that I always say this, but businesses are run by people, not robots, right? Well, I mean, maybe there's some that might be. But, we know for sure, like a real business, like your business, my business, Francisco, we're all, Sam, we're all running businesses that are run by people. So you're saying I have permission to allow my business to have a little bit of a personality?
Yes, please.
Tell me about that. What is it? Yes, please. Okay. All right. Tell me about that.
Yes. And it's just, and so it's going to be, bigger businesses, Nike, that kind of stuff, not going to make as much sense. But small businesses, people are connecting with you. Like, yes, they want what you do. Yes, your reputation draws them in, but ultimately, like, it is you is why they're working with you. So sharing that personality so they can have that personal connection with you. And so they can think, the people running this business gets me, I think is a great way to put that. This business gets me. And it's not a robot, it's a real person. This business has personality, and it even, feeds into the branding. It just strengthens your brand.
So you mentioned a book, Build Your Story Brand. And I like a book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. He did a really great TED Talk. And I think it's kind of the same concept. And Simon approaches it differently, that we all need to have a really good why, like our mission. And as leaders or as businesses, because having that, because you said the business gets me. And I think Simon Sinek goes on and on about Apple, but he goes on and on about like 10 years ago Apple, when Steve Jobs had just left. But the idea that Apple's mission was really to challenge the status quo and think differently. So when people were lining up around the block to get the latest iPhone, it wasn't because they thought the iPhone was all that great. It was because they go, that business gets me, because they believe things that I believe. So what you're saying is, like, if Sam running, is it Grit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? So if he's running Grit, and Grit is, that's a great word embedded right in his business name. His account should maybe like personify what he means by grit, and it should, so that people who want that in their lives, or who maybe think they have that in their lives, can identify with that. What does he do to do that?
Absolutely. So that kind of goes into like having those brand values or that vibe, that way you want to show up. And so it's sharing stories that reflect that. It's inspiring people and speaking to them to make them feel like they have grit. It's it's kind of infusing it in everything you do, as well as like the language you might be using to do your posts. So it's inspiring people to lean into that emotion, as well as sharing your own story about that emotion, we'll say, and sharing other people's stories as well. And showing up in a way, you know, if grit is the word we're focusing on, you're not going to be showing up like really quiet, just kind of like passive, posting a little here and there. Like, you want to show up with grit.
I think you said your brand values. So I know, so marketing is famous, and social media falls into this group too, famous for changing words. So we'll love a word for a few years, like we'll say audience, and then all of a sudden we won't like audience, so we'll say, target market, and then we won't like that, so then we'll come up with something else. We're always changing our words, right? But talking about brand values, because you have a mission statement, now I have my values, and I'm not necessarily asking you to tell me the difference, but like, I should identify what my business values as a way to communicate with my audience in hopes that they value that too. And is that what you're saying? How many should I look at? What should I be looking to do there? How do I do that?
Absolutely. So when I work with my clients, and from my own experience, we can make a list of, here's my 20 values for my business, but then it's really hard to remember those and to embody those. So I suggest coming up with like 3 to 5 core values, the things that your business values above all else that guide the way that you do business. And then also, because I also do it for ideal customers, so you get to know your customers' values as well. And they might be similar to your business values, but they might be a little different. So as you're showing up on social media, you do want to be sharing things that I've heard of called like virtue indicators. So sharing things that help people recognize that they share similar values with you.
I don't know if other people are using that, but virtue indicators I could see as like being the next marketing buzzy
Not
thing.
my term.
Okay.
I don't remember where I heard it, but I was like,
I'm
yes.
giving you all credit for that. Virtue indicators. That's so buzzy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think about, so Sam, I'm going to pick on you now. There's this video that, and maybe you've all seen it, where it's this little kid, he's in a karate studio. It's some martial arts studio, and he's doing the breaking the board, and he just can't do it. And he's crying, and his coach, they all have different terms. Can I use coach? Is coach safe to use?
Sure.
Is it? Okay. You can educate me later. How about that? So his coach is like there rooting him on, and this kid, and they're really, it looks like the kid's isolated, like he's having to do this all on his own. Finally, he breaks it, but then he's just swarmed by all of the people that are there watching it. So that to me that's the personification of grit. Like, you're doing this thing, you're powering through. We didn't see it, but he had a whole team of people behind it. So maybe their values are grit, but team, and all those things. How do we do that? That seemed like that video was so organic and it wasn't staged. But what are your recommendations? Like, how do we capture that in our business when it happens? Should we just have to have our phone on all the time? Like, what do we do?
When it comes to like speaking about values.
Yeah, like how do we, so that was an organic moment that just happened live, and it was probably a parent that got it on video, and then the person who owned the studio said, hey, can I share that? So it's probably something like that. But how do I just need to grab like a tripod and I just have this thing running all the time? Or like, what do I do? How do I prepare for that? How do I capture those more organic moments that speak to my virtues?
When it comes to trying to capture organic moments that speak to your virtues, it's kind of like you have this filter, you know what your values are. And so as you're operating throughout the world, if you see something that reminds you of your values or speaks to why your values are important, take a photo, share a story, do a video. I did something kind of like this recently where I love McDonald's. And I was eating McDonald's, and I was like, you know what? McDonald's has they've had my business for life. And I'm like, they make a quality product. I know what I'm gonna get every single time. They are reliable. And so I got on my social media and I posted about this. So it's kind of like that. It's once you know what your values are, like you'll kind of see how it shows up in different ways.
I have a buddy, Greg, who's kind of like he was a foodie and a food critic for a little while before he went back into his real job, and he kind of flirts with his real job and wanting to be this food critic, food person. he loves McDonald's. So every time we go out, and it cracks me up, we'll go out, we go to Seattle, he'll take me out to like the coolest restaurants and the best spaces, and then we'll have a couple drinks, and he'll go, hey, will you run me by McDonald's before we go home? He needs his nuggets to like end his day. It cracks me. And he has like, you know, McDonald's doesn't always have the best reputation sometimes, but he'll own it. He's like, I love McDonald's. And same thing, quality product. They've had my business forever. I know what I'm going to get, you know, all those things. I just had to jump in and say, okay, so I haven't done a very good job. Normally, I'm pretty clear to let people, I think we did this with the online audience, which by the way, there's been quite a few people. They haven't been chatting, but we've had a lot of people watching.
Awesome.
Are there any questions? We're coming up on our last 10 minutes. Does anybody here in the room have any questions you wanted to ask? I know I've been asking all the questions, but this is certainly an opportunity for anybody here to ask questions. Anything that we've covered that you want us to dig into, or maybe something we haven't talked about yet?
I have a question as far as like, when you talk about batch content creation, have you seen in your experience like one type of company, let's say you're selling plants versus another company that's selling cars? That's a very different price point. So I mean, do they push out content more because it's a lower price point or higher price point? What's your experience there?
Before you answer that, I just want to repeat that so that everybody hears us. So Francisco's asking about batch content, and when you're a business that maybe has an item that's a higher price point versus a lower price point, are there some rules there or anything that you would say, you know, so go ahead and answer that, but I just want to make sure our online audience hears that question.
If it's a lower price point, are you more consistent? Are you doing 5 times a week posting versus once a week?
I think the price point doesn't really matter. It's really going to be what works best for you and showing up as often as you can. But where I think it does matter is if, say, you have a product-based business over a service-based business, you can get away posting a little less with a service-based business. But if you're selling products and you have 5 products, 10 products, 100 products, like the more you can post, the better, because there are so many products to show off. But when it comes to price point, I don't really feel like there is a difference in the cadence or how often you should be posting.
I would say too, you mentioned car dealers. One of my favorite experiences from a business with social media was when we bought a car from a car dealership. It's Apple Valley Honda over in Wenatchee. I will probably buy my next car there if I have to go buy a car, even though it's all the way over there, because their process was so great. But then as you're signing the paperwork to buy the car, one of the pieces of paper was, can we take your picture and share it on our social media? They were really clear about what they were gonna do when they did it. It was a really great experience, and they were all about, so it wasn't just showing off their cars, it was showing off the people that they serve, and I thought that that was really cool. We have another question. We have a question that came in online. So Karen asked, when showing your personality, and I have my thoughts on this question, so I'm gonna let you answer, then I'm gonna answer too, I think. So I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. So when showing your personality, is it okay to talk about your faith, conservatism, political views? I've been told that you can do that because there are people that feel the way you do, and that there are plenty of customers out there that have similar values.
I am interested to hear your take on this. So there's no right answer for any business. There's no one size fits all answer to business. I think you need to think about who is your audience, what is your business, is posting about those kinds of things going to make sense for your brand, and how strongly do you feel about it? So I would say a lot of times you probably don't really want to post about, we'll say like touchy subjects, politics, things like that. If your faith is part of who you are and part of your story, then share about that, absolutely, if you're sharing about yourself. But just really think about, why do I want to be sharing about this? And how is this going to reflect back on my brand? What are my customers going to think about this? And again, why? Why do I want to share about this?
I think that's pretty close to my take on it. And I think what it comes down to is, Karen's not wrong. If you decide you want to be hyper political, hyper religious, and I'm not talking one way or the other. I'm just saying, if that's your stand, one way or the other, I'm going to be this way. Politically, I'm going to be this way. With my faith. Even if you're a Buddhist, like, you're going to turn off people. But if you're okay with that because it's not your audience, because they don't fit your audience, I think about yoga a lot, right? Like, how many people do we know that don't do yoga and won't ever do yoga? They can talk about their values all day long, but there's no alignment there. When it comes to faith, that's in my mission statement. So my mission starts with, we exist to serve God by serving others. So I wear that front and center. I have a little bit different take on my faith. So owning it though, on the upfront, I've sat across the table from lesbians and people from the LGBTQ community, people with different pronouns that I'm not maybe used to or comfortable with. And it's never been an issue. And in fact, every single time I've done that, the people sitting across from me have said, I really appreciate that you just own your values.
Yeah.
So to Karen's point, as long as you're not being, you're not poking the bear, you're not out there just to, right? And I think about, we've seen them, truck flags, like, right? And we know that there are people out there making a ton of money on truck flags, and they are being incendiary, right? They are trying to poke the bear, and that's how they're selling stuff. That aside, I think if you're posting your values, people might just appreciate that you're willing to own your values on the upfront, even if they don't necessarily agree with all of them.
Absolutely. And I did want to speak to you. You said it might, it might turn people off. People might not like that. But whether it's, your values, your religion, your politics, or you're just talking about the way you make a product or this or that, there's always going to be things about your business, whether it's, maybe a heavy subject or a lighter subject that people aren't going to like, that's going to turn people off. But not everyone is your ideal customer. So we are fine with that.
Yeah, and I want to just clarify, when I say I'm not comfortable with pronouns, I don't mean I'm uncomfortable. I just mean, in our area, in our region, it's not very often you run across somebody who's using a pronoun that is, maybe something you're not accustomed to seeing. I didn't want anybody to think he's not comfortable with. I have he and him on my LinkedIn profile, so clearly I'm embracing that community. I just don't want anybody to think he's living wrong values or something. All right, so if there's not any other questions, we've got about 5 minutes left. Oh, go ahead, Don.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you talked about a story arc in reference to building a story brand. Phenomenal book. I love it. In terms of social media, which is really specifically designed to be taken in bite-sized portions, how do you create a story arc when you don't know if somebody's going to see one post or 20 posts?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, one thing I like to do within my own posts is you can tell the whole story, from guide through resolution in a post, but then also just think about what is the stance I'm coming at this from. So maybe this post you're just talking about how you help them, but you're coming from a place of, being their guide, or maybe this post is about the struggles they're facing. So it's about speaking to those different parts of the story arc in different posts, and just knowing not everyone is going to see all of them, but using that throughout your narrative, and then including some of those longer form posts too that are kind of like the whole story in one, but just speaking to each piece of the story. And that's a great way as you're going through your posts and these are the different points of the story arc. Okay, I'm focusing on this one thing right now, so I'm going to talk about this or talk to this or talk in this way in this post, and so on.
I think of it a lot like flipping channels. Like if you are used to channel surfing and you'll stop and watch a movie and it doesn't matter where that movie's at, like you caught it halfway or 3/4 of the way through. If it's a good enough story, I think people are willing to jump in and catch up wherever you are. And I think that just goes to what you were saying. Like, just know where you're at and know what you're saying, and people will jump in and they'll find the value where it makes sense. They're just brand surfing, I guess, instead of channel surfing. I just want to ask one last question if we don't have any other here. I know what the answer, but I know what drives me nuts about small businesses on social media, and I know we've heard one of the things, which is not updating your profile or making sure, but what are the things that you see that just drive you nuts about the way small businesses engage online?
I would say, yes, like we talked about, not having an updated or clear bio. Another thing that drives me nuts is using low quality photos, blurry photos, poor graphics. So showing up in a way that poorly represents their business or their brand. I see this a lot. Or to some degree, using your business's social media too much like a personal account. Like, people don't want to see pictures of your cats if that has nothing to do with your business. People don't care that your niece just graduated kindergarten. So, have a clear bio, use quality images that represent your business well, and remember that you are a business, this is not your personal account.
And I think, so the business as a personal account is phenomenal. So that's a really great, and if somebody hears from this is that, I think that's a really good takeaway. But just to do a shameless plug here, we actually, our first virtual business brew was with Matt Slotemaker, who came and talked about how to do those things on a budget, how to have good photography, how to have good videography. Most of us have a cell phone that's pretty new with a pretty decent camera. There's just some tips and tricks to using it. I think for me, the biggest thing I see people is they want to use the zoom on the camera. So they'll take a picture and they want to zoom in. And unless you have, like, a buddy of mine has an Android that does 100 times zoom. It's insane. He has like 5 cameras on the back of it. We were on the top of Mount Spokane looking at 49 degrees north, and he was able to zoom in and you could see the cell towers on the top of the mountain. It was bananas, but most of us don't have that phone. So I always tell people, turn your phone this way, don't zoom in, crop it later, because these cameras just don't have like a high quality zoom function. But there's some tips and tricks that came up in the last business brew. But just real quick, hit us with what are some of your tips for getting images on a budget with my cell phone?
Yeah, I would say get to know your cell phone. Watch a YouTube video about how to take photos with it if you don't feel like you are adept in that area. And then the number one thing I say is make sure your camera lens is clean, because that does make a difference. So wipe that camera lens off. Make sure it is clearly lit. So that doesn't mean you need lights or anything. You just want it to be clearly lit. You don't want to have shadows. So pay attention to the lighting, and then hold the camera still. I see a lot of blurry photos. So just wipe off your camera lens, make sure the lighting is decent, and hold your camera still.
I would say for a lot of your videos that I've seen, you do it outside because natural lighting is just so good, right? So when in doubt, just head outside, right?
Yeah.
I think that's always a good.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to be really conscientious of everybody's time. It is straight up 9 o'clock, so we'll call it here virtually. Do you have one more thing?
I have one more
thing. Oh my
thing I
gosh,
need
you
to
just
add.
like leaned in. You're like, I have to get this out.
Well,
Okay,
it was one of the questions you prepared, which was when I'm getting started with a small business with their social media, or someone else was, where do you start? And so this is really important. If you're getting started with social media or you've skipped this step, the number one thing is getting to know your client, is really getting to know your client or customer, because your social media is for them. You're going to be speaking to them. So that is where you need to start.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of the work I end up doing in marketing is going back and helping people relearn that, because it's the natural tendency is just to go, this is what I care about, this is what's important to me, my cats, my niece's graduation. So I'll post about that because that makes sense, and it's not always what works. The irony is the number one thing people want to see on my own social media site, it's awful because I kind of hate it, is they just want to see pictures of me out doing stuff. So they want to see pictures of me doing a workshop or doing this and that. I get more engagement on that than anything else I'll do. Even when I try to write a blog or do tips or post Business Brew as a podcast, they just want to see, and I've had to learn that and then kind of be comfortable with that over the years. And so I think it's also going to be stretching yourself maybe a little bit into areas that you're not as comfortable with, because it's not about you. Okay.
Yes, so true.
So thanks for everybody who joined us here live. Thank you for everyone who joined us on, I'm pointing at my laptop like everybody knows what I'm doing. Thank you for everyone who joined us on Facebook. I also want to just really quickly say thank you to Nathan Slaybaugh with Slaybaugh Media. We're going to give that dude a round of applause, because without him, we couldn't reach our online audience. I also want to just do a quick thank you to Bernardo Wills Architects for the Bissinger Room. Quick plug, if you're looking for a corporate event space, this place is awesome. And again, thank you, Sarah, for joining us. What's the best place for me to connect with you on social media if people want to learn more about your tips and tricks in general?
Yes, the best place to connect with me is on Instagram. I love to be on Instagram, and you can find me at Work Life Sarah, Sarah with an H. Work Life Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll call it. We'll wrap it up. And then, hopefully we'll see everybody back. I think it's April 14th because spring break throws things off. So we'll be back like April 14th. So that second-ish full week of April. So stay tuned for more. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh.